Welcome to Beneath the Wing. Just like air passing over the wing of an aircraft provides lift, the people we meet can also give us lift in life by sharing their stories of strength and success, connecting us all. Beneath the Wing explores the stories of those connected with the Minnesota Air National Guard's 133rd Airlift Wing with a little humor and learning along the way. I'm your host, Wing Command Chief Mark Legvold.
Joining me for this episode of Beneath the Wing is Master Sergeant Brian Doblar, the 133rd Airlift Wing's First Sergeant of the Year and former First Sergeant for the Logistics Readiness Squadron. Sergeant Doblar is a traditional guardsman, meaning he drills 1 weekend a month, as well as a few weeks for training and deployments, and balancing a full-time civilian career, and balancing a family, and being Megan's husband and father of 3 boys. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad you joined me for Beneath the Wing. So when I say you were the First Sergeant of the Year for us, standard question, what is it you say you do here? What does a First Sergeant do? And I actually legitimately just got asked this question by a guy who never, the concept is foreign to people that work out in the civilian world. Mm-hmm. What's a First Sergeant?
Yeah, so I get that question. I obviously got that question a lot because they say, oh, you're in the military, what do you do? Well, I'm a First Sergeant. Well, what's a First Sergeant? So the way I kind of explain it is really, and the thing that I love the most about the position of being a SHIRT is you get to be, your mission becomes the people. So that's really kind of how I explain it to people is say, you know, I don't want to liken it to HR, right? But that's kind of, there's some intertwining of HR and being a First Sergeant. So the way I like to explain it to people is as a First Sergeant, you get to take care of people problems. You get to handle any concerns that come up, help people navigate maybe some tough life situations, have some difficult conversations with people. And the whole purpose of it is to make sure that the enlisted force is capable, is ready, and is mission capable.
So when you tell me it's kind of HR, but it's not because you're taking care of people issues, what are people issues?
So a lot of the people issues kind of come up with things that are going on potentially in their personal lives. Hey, I know that we have drill this weekend. This is what I have going on. My mom's in the hospital, right? Those kinds of issues. Or the bigger ticket items, right? Like it comes up, this person was going for their security clearance and we discovered that they have tens of thousands of dollars in debt that they're about to default on. And so how do we manage those things? And so as the First Sergeant, right, it's my responsibility to be that person, to kind of be there for the member, help them navigate, hey, this is what we can expect kind of going forward, and also, kind of helping squadron leadership, like the commander and the chiefs and everybody kind of navigate next steps and how do we do this and take care of the airmen at the same time.
Would you say that being a First Sergeant is a leadership position or a management position?
So I personally, I think it's more of a leadership position.
So what's the difference?
That's a very good question. So to me, a management position is one where you are sort of in charge of the day-to-day operations, right? The scheduling, the tasky stuff that needs to get done, right? That stuff. You're managing somebody, you're managing a system, managing a process. Leadership is kind of that next level above where you really sort of have to be that go-to person for people when they're experiencing tough times, when they don't know necessarily what to do next, right? That's management, management is going to take care of the day-to-day stuff, but leadership is that next step above. What are we thinking? How is this going to potentially impact the next 3 to 6 months, right? Say, for instance, someone has a deployment coming up. Well, now you have this issue that could potentially impact their ability to deploy. Right now you need those leadership skills to help that member manage the situation, manage the expectation that they're going to deploy while understanding that this is tough, right? Life issues come up all the time for all of us. And it doesn't make you necessarily a bad person, right? It's just these things happen. And as a First Sergeant, you get to be that person that's there for them. Your mission is to make sure that they get a fair shake in things, that they can come to you and confide in you when they have an issue, and that they know that you're going to be there to do everything you can to take care of them, which to me is a little bit more of a leadership trait.
It requires a high degree of trust between the people and you as a first sergeant,
Absolutely.
doesn't it?
Yep.
So in that relationship of trust, how do you build that? And this kind of goes to every single organization, whether you wear a camouflaged uniform or a different colored uniform or a suit and tie or a hard hat, or any organization. The trust that is developed between people in that organization is really important. And you stepped out of a role in security forces and into a first sergeant role in a completely different organization. How did you build trust with people?
To me, building trust kind of starts with letting them know that I'm genuine through my actions, right? You can say that you're this or that or whatever, but ultimately it comes down to you have to exhibit those traits, right, that you want people to see in you, and you have to let them start to understand that and start to internalize that about you. So one of my big kind of tenets of when I come into a new position is not to come in guns a-blazing, going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to change this, I'm going to change that. No, come in, get acclimated to your environment, let other people get acclimated to you, because, I mean, a first sergeant coming into a unit from, another squadron that doesn't understand the dynamics of, all of the dynamics that are in an LRS unit where you have other flights that, are independent, you got to learn your role too, right? And learn your operating environment and understand some of the people dynamics, right, that are there. And then, to me, in doing that, that's how you get people used to you as well. So that's always been one of my big tenets, is I don't want to be one of the people that just comes in guns a-blazing. And to me, that's how you start building trust. They know that you're there for them, right? Not necessarily there for yourself, or you're not there to, try to be an organizational hero, right? Things like that. And having real conversations with people, right? I love getting to know people. And so I'm frequently asking people about their personal lives, right? Are you married? You got kids, right? And trying to relate to them if they do have kids, right? I remember what it was like not having kids and having all this time on my hands, right?
No more.
Yeah, no more. Yeah. So just those kinds of real conversations to get to know the person that I'm talking to.
So you get to know more of the human side of people that do the work in your squadron, and developing those relationships, getting some rapport. One thing that I have learned through my career of working with human beings is they're going to break your heart.
Totally.
They're going to do things that disappoint you, just like raising kids. They're going to do things that are hard. They're going to go through things that are hard, like you said. What's one of the hardest things, protecting your human beings, of course, but what's one of the hard things about being a first sergeant? Some of the hard stuff you've had to deal with?
I've had to deal with, I would say the hardest is you have somebody that you think is really diligent in their life, and they're in a good place, and then something happens, and now, right, let's say a disciplinary action that is now going to end their career, and having to approach that person and be professional, because there is a process that has to take place when you're talking about discipline, and there are wheels that are spinning already that are going to spin, right? The train is going to go down the tracks on this. There's no way to stop it, and you feel for the person, because this is coming out of left field, and you know that this military career is important to them. It means a lot to them, but it's going to end in the very near future. And I had to deal with that one time, and it was very difficult for me, because I got uncomfortable thinking about putting myself in their shoes, how I would feel, right? And having been here this long, and my identity so closely tied to this uniform, it makes me sick to my stomach. I get anxious. My palms start to sweat just thinking about I've built this thing, right? And this person built this thing as well, and now it's suddenly gonna end in the very, very near near term, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. One of the things that we have seen in this period that we're in, with the great resignation and people leaving the workplace or being very transient in the workplace, is they're leaving. Well, people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses. And they would consistently say a bad boss is somebody who doesn't care about me.
Mm-hmm.
As a first sergeant, you're kind of that caring person. Even though the process stinks and we have to go through it, I'm going to be here to be the one that cares through the whole thing, even though it's awful for everybody. That's hard. How do you handle your emotions through that? Who cares for the caregiver in this case?
So that's a really good question. And with my background being in law enforcement, right, having to have those really difficult emotional, I liken it to my first DOA with the police department. My first DOA was a guy who was in his early 60s, and his brother walks in and lays down next to him and is pleading with him to wake up, right? And I'm brand new to the job. And so I've become very accustomed to sort of managing my emotions and detaching myself from those, especially having a brother and, being close with him.
Sure.
I had to learn very quickly at that time to manage my own emotions. And so when those moments come up, for me, I've got to share it, right? I've got to talk about it. I just have to. And that's where my wife, right, has been such a solid support, because I can talk to her about anything, she understands, right, that she has been pivotal for me, right, to just kind of get those emotions off my chest. Everything's going to be okay, right? And that's for me how I manage my emotions when those things happen. And I share those things with her, and she knows that I need to kind of talk it through. And I'm open talking about those things with just about anybody that will listen to. So having other shirts going through the same trials and tribulations helps as well. So the First Sergeant Council is a big sounding board for all of us to say, this is tough. This stuff is tough.
Yeah.
And especially when the new shirts show up, and it's for those of us. I mean, when I came on as a shirt, it was a very big transitional period where a lot of us were new. And so we were all kind of trying to figure it out together. Well, I have some experience in this particular process, but let's talk about, this is going to be tough.
Yeah.
And so really just kind of leaning on each other like that.
Having a good group of colleagues that are trusting in one another to be emotionally vulnerable and professionally vulnerable, saying, hey, I don't know everything, or I don't know if I handle this well, or I just need some good sage wisdom and guidance, and trusting one another. That's something that is so extraordinarily helpful in these tough positions. May is month of the military family.
Yep.
And you mentioned your wife being your sounding board and her being that helping person. We so frequently, when we talk about the sacrifice of the military and the military members, and then we talk about the sacrifice of the military families, the kids, the spouses, the parents who pick up the pieces when son or daughter deploys, rarely do we talk about the emotional support that our military families give their spouses when they come out here and serve. Because relationship and the person that serves to the left and right of you, those relationships are so key, and it wears on our heart. And we talk about it when we get home.
Yep.
So I'm so glad that you mentioned that, and I'm so glad that you've got a good helper in that.
Great helper.
At home. You mentioned shirt. Okay, so I introduced you, Brian, as the First Sergeant of the Year, and then you refer to yourself as the shirt. What does that mean? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, I've done a little bit because I've been asked that too. Like, what's a shirt? Why did they call them shirt? And there's different names for it, right? The Army calls them top. I'm a big fan of the. I heard an appropriate slang term for First Sergeant as being the first sausage, right? And I think that's hilarious. I just, it's
never heard that one.
Army thing, I guess.
Okay.
So shirt is just kind of the quick way to say First Sergeant, right? That's That's kind of how I liken it. And a nickname, which I kind of liken shirt to be as a nickname, to me is a sign of sort of acceptance, right? Because you don't give nicknames to the people that you don't particularly care for, right? It's so that's what it is to me. It's sort of like an acceptance kind of thing, whether it be for the position at first, right? But then the person as you become acclimated and accepted into a group.
I've heard two different stories on that one, and I agree with you. We don't give nicknames to the people. So sure, it is a term of endearment for that person that carries the heart and the human soul of an organization. One story was when that top enlisted leader in an organization, when they'd go to eat, they'd always eat last, which is always a good, leadership tenet. Boots would come, they'd always get the last bit of boots. They'd always get the last, of everything. But when new uniforms came, they always got the first shirt.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I heard that one. And then work crews would go out and they'd be, digging a trench or foxhole or whatever, and of course it's hot, so they'd all take their shirt off, but one person was in charge. And so when somebody would come up and, hey, who's in charge around here? Talk to the shirt.
Talk to the shirt.
Yeah.
That's
funny. But I like the nickname one. It just it does make a whole lot of sense. As a first sergeant, you did a ton of work the last couple of years, taking good care of airmen and soldiers here at the wing during our activations. We've been downtown after George Floyd was murdered. We sent folks off to Washington, D.C. This base was a very busy place. What did you do as somebody that's supposed to carry that heart and soul of an organization and take good care of the people doing the work? What was your role as a first sergeant when we were actively doing work, military work?
That's a really great question. So initially when in 2020, when we had the initial activation, I wasn't quite a shirt yet. I actually got pulled back into this role with security forces and was given a security mission at the armory. But still already being in that position, still trying to embody that in taking care of people. We know that these are tough situations, right? This is where the rubber meets the road for us and what we do. So understanding that, there are going to be people that are going to not have the things that they need, right? Which to me was kind of step number one, especially when it came time for Operation Safety Net, right? It was everything was in place, and then we had to hit execute before we were ready to hit execute, and now people are still missing things. There are certain things that just aren't quite at the forefront yet, right? Such as food, right, was a big one. I can go and the first thing I do when I get activated as a first sergeant for Operation Safety Net is I kind of go around, okay, where are my people at, right? Because they're spread out all over the Capitol complex and in St. Paul, and I was responsible just for St. Paul. Minneapolis hadn't quite been stood up yet, but where is everybody at? I need to know who do I have, what am I dealing with, who do I need to support? And it being a joint operation, obviously there was a lot of Army soldiers as well, and so what do you guys need? That's my first question. What do you guys need? I'm here to facilitate that. If that requires a phone call, if that requires me to go and do something or go purchase something off that you guys don't have access to, right? That's what I'm here for, right? Because I want you guys. I understand that it's tough duty, right? Where we don't know exactly what's going to happen as this thing evolves, and so it's really how can I best set you all up so that it's a little less miserable, a little less tough emotionally, things like that. So that, that it came down to essentially just providing them with something tangible that helped them get through it, right? So one of the big deficiencies was, they're basically positioned in certain places, and there's no way for them to just grab a drink, grab a snack, grab something like that. And thankfully, I was pointed in the direction of the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon Network, and I reached out to that resource, and we were able to get donations from their support network, and they flooded us with Gatorades, right? Bottled water, snacks, right? The things that these guys are going to need as they're waiting for something to happen. And so we got deliveries basically by the van load, and stocked these guys up. And that's such a huge thing for them, because now we've brought them some sort of something that they can look at and just, they can rely on that stuff to get them through the next couple days or whatever else. And it was a fun moment for me, because the Air Force guys are like, great, finally we get what we expect, and the Army guys go, where did you get all that stuff? Right? And they go, well, none of our guys are bringing us that stuff. I said, this stuff is for you too. You're right here with us. There's
a big difference between a first sergeant in the Army
100%.
who run operations.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
First sergeant in the Air Force.
Absolutely.
Specifically there to take care of the people
Yep.
who have to do the mission.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it was that was a great feeling, right? Because obviously, I care about these guys, and I want them to, I know what it's like to sit and wait and wait and wait. It's a lot better to sit and wait and wait and wait if once in a while you can get up and go grab a bottle of water or go grab a snack or something like that.
Yeah.
And then obviously facilitating other things that they, mission essential stuff that they're needing, like laundry. Right? We had a big issue with the laundry, because they were basically basic training style, dropping them off in mesh bags at the hotel lobby, saying, "Here, take my stuff." Well, you want to talk about trust, right? Wait till somebody's got all your uniforms.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so that there becomes an issue there. Where'd our laundry go? Well, now that's an issue that I need to handle, and so it's for me to figure out where in this process is the problem.
Was that the most rewarding thing you did or accomplished as a first sergeant? Or what would you say was? And I'm using past tense now, because you are doing something that's relatively painful, and that is, after being a first sergeant, after achieving First Sergeant of the Year, after holding people's hearts and souls in your hands in an organization, you're taking the diamond off, and it's an emotional event. Mm-hmm. It's hard. What are you most proud of?
That's a big one. That one definitely was, because that's really where you, short of deploying as a first sergeant, which I didn't get the opportunity to do, that's really where that's, like I said before, it's where the rubber meets the road, right? Like that's really why you're there. You have people who are actively doing a mission, and there are some deficiencies for those people, and you get to be the person to bring some, I don't know what you want to call it, happiness. You want to bring them something that's just going to help them get through, right? It's a nice gesture, right? Do they need that stuff? No. Is it nice to have? Very much so, especially when you're sitting waiting and waiting and waiting for something to happen. The other thing that's I would say, aside from that stuff, is it's just those one-on-one conversations that you get to have when people come in and say, "Hey, sure, you got a second?" Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Right? I just want to talk something. I just want to get it off my chest. One of the big times was when the COVID vaccine became mandated, right? I had a lot of people in my office, right, that were having a very tough time deciding what to do, because, they felt deeply about two conflicting things, right? And that was, personal beliefs about the vaccine and about COVID and things like that, and their military career and their drive to serve, right? And so they come to my office, and I'm more than happy to talk through it, because you have to be able to talk through it, right? If nothing else, just to get your thoughts out and have somebody who's just there to listen, right? I mean, to me, that's the most rewarding, because when people come to me, that's when I enjoy it, right? Because they trust me enough to know that I'm not there to judge them. I'm not there to try and steer their decision one way or another, although that is a little bit different. But at least I want to hear you out, right? And give validity to the personal conflict that they're experiencing, because that is tough, right? We all have personal beliefs, and in the military, sometimes you don't necessarily get to make decisions based on, decisions are made for you, right? And you have to follow them, and it may be in conflict sometimes with personal beliefs, and just kind of talking through those things and how do you manage that.
It's a hard thing.
Mm-hmm.
We struggled with that for the last 2.5 years,
Yep.
2 years. And that is the fact that we've got things that we have to follow. And
Mm-hmm.
people not ever wearing a military uniform will say, well, don't you just follow orders?
Yeah.
Well, yes, we do. But every human being behind an order that is following that order has feelings about it.
Yep.
And we don't always get it right when we give them.
Mm-hmm.
But the ability to have a person in a role that has the heart and the compassion to just listen
Mm-hmm.
and understand
Mm-hmm.
is so critical to keeping our good people here with a feeling that this is a good place to serve.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Got to follow orders, and sometimes you don't agree with them, but you will.
Yep.
If you feel heard, you'll feel okay about it.
Yep.
Not perfect, but
Yep.
okay. And that's been a hard balance. Having first sergeants, having real good supervisors there doing that hard work, it has been a challenging couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So you're taking the diamond off.
I am.
It is a significant emotional event. What are you doing now?
So now I'm back in security forces, kind of going back home as the operations superintendent, which I didn't anticipate. I always knew I would go back to security forces when I took the diamond off. I didn't anticipate it being this soon. When you think about the progression of your own career, you sort of have a vision of how it's going to play out, how the variables that you think could go this way, it could go that way. I didn't anticipate being back here so soon. And it was a tough decision to make the transition because I loved what I was doing as a first sergeant. I really did. I loved it. I got very lucky. LRS is a fantastic squadron with great people to be a part of. And it was really hard to make that decision to leave them, to go back to security forces. But at the same time, I mean, security forces is, those are the people that I came up with. Those are the people I grew up with and I progressed in my career with. And so to have a chance to kind of go back and be that, try to be that leadership voice and leadership person to, lead a squadron of my peers. I couldn't pass up on the opportunity.
I'm going to reintroduce you. We're going to take a break and unpack that a little bit. I've been talking with the 133rd Airlift Wing's First Sergeant of the Year, Master Sergeant Brian Doblar. We're going to take a quick break, hear an important message, and we will be right back, so please stick around. Hey everybody, Chief Legvold here. Wanted to take a moment to introduce you to a wonderful resource that we all have available to us called MilitaryOneSource.mil. If you're old like me and you plug in MilitaryOneSource.com, it'll just bring you to the .mil webpage. So Military One Source is the one to remember. It's got all kinds of great information on military life cycle, education and employment, health and wellness, family relationships, you name it. You can find it, and it is a free resource for military members. If you're a podcast fan of this one and others, they also have several podcasts that you can access through MilitaryOneSource.mil, and you can listen to learn about all the resources that you have available to you. So please take a moment, go to MilitaryOneSource.mil. Let's get back to First Sergeant Doblar. I've been talking with the 133rd Airlift Wing's First Sergeant of the Year, Master Sergeant Brian Doblar, now the Security Forces Superintendent. So you're moving back into your original career field. Let's talk about career transition and what your goals are. And maybe relate this back to what your goals were when you became a First Sergeant and moved into. Mm-hmm. Because you've been gone from security forces for a while, and there's a churn and a turnover. Mm-hmm. You're going to be dealing with strangers.
Hugely.
Yeah. What are your goals?
Well, that's a big question.
And I'm not doing the job interview anyway.
No, I know.
You already got that.
No, I know. And I'll talk about a little bit what I spoke about in my boards. With so many new people, I'm kind of back at square one, and I alluded to it earlier. With so many new people, I mean, it is amazing the turnover in 2.5 years in a squadron. Of how many new faces there are. I mean, it's astounding. But so I'm kind of back at square one, right? I need to let them get to know who I am, right? How I go about my business. But this is a little bit of a different challenge. It's similar to the transition to being a first sergeant, because now I'm again a part of a leadership team, right? And so I'm going into it with the mentality that the position I'm in is really kind of the conduit between leadership and the enlisted force, and it's easy to sit back and because I remember what it was like being a staff sergeant, being a tech sergeant, and seeing the things that are being done right at the leadership level and how it impacts me, right, and having the short-sighted of, well, that's just bullshit.
I remember you when you were a staff sergeant.
Yeah, I bet you do. Yes. And so it's easy to kind of get into that, and it's funny how your eyes open, the more you're exposed to that higher level strategic thinking and long-term thinking and development of people and development of a squadron. And so my goal is really to shed some light on that, right, for these younger airmen and for the staff sergeants and the techs, and to kind of do it both ways, right? One of the big things that I talked about in my boards for this position was, as leaders, we need to think about, what is the airman experience like? What's their experience? The decisions that we make directly impact them, right? And one of the things, and I was just having a conversation with Major Wallen about this. We were just kind of talking philosophically. Is that, do we need to know why decisions are made? Do we need to know all the variables and the limiting factors and things like that go into leadership decisions? And the answer, by and large, is no, you don't. You just need to know what time to show up, where to show up, and what do you need, by and large. Is that what you need? Yes. Is that really what we should be providing? No. Right? Because this generation, and I'm part of it, right? I'm a self-proclaimed millennial, right? I really am.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, I am.
You're doing a great job at it too, buddy.
Thank you. But the airman experience, right, is they want to know these things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we live in the information age, right? I can tell you, you can ask me any question, and it'll take me a couple minutes to find it on my phone, right? But I have access to that information. So to deprive, not necessarily deprive, I shouldn't use deprive, but to expect that we can just share, this is the decision, right? Deal with it, right? It's just it doesn't lead to a good airman experience, and so really, that then leads into retention, right? It leads into development, all of those things, and so that's really, my goal is really to kind of develop that communication highway, right, between the airmen and the junior NCOs, right, and the officers. I mean, I really feel like that's that's my role, and that's really my goal. Is I want to think about it from the aspect of airman experience.
Yeah, and giving them the why as much as you possibly can. So when you can't give them the why,
absolutely,
they understand.
Yep,
you just can't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So important. And I appreciate the fact that you're kind of branding that as the airman experience, because now you're old.
Tell me about it.
You're the millennial guy that's in a leadership position, and we have this new exciting generation coming into the military. And they are an exciting batch, but they're going to see through any inauthenticity in a heartbeat. And I love that about them, because it challenges us as the old people in the organization to just do better.
Yep.
Just
Absolutely.
do better. One of the things that we know about you is this is a family legacy.
It is.
Yeah, and Dad served in this organization.
He did.
Your organization.
Yes,
and
he did.
Your brother serves in the Guard. Where did that ethos of military service come from in your family? All the way to the point where when somebody graduates from high school, they wear their junior ROTC uniform for their senior picture. How does that happen in a family? You're welcome.
Oh boy, somebody brought that up to me this morning, and yeah, awesome. It really, I think, stems from because 3 generations, I should say 4 generations, because both my nephews are now in the Navy. But both my grandfathers, my maternal grandmother, all served in the Air Force during Korea. My dad served 21 years in the Air Force, right here in the Guard in security forces, and so for me it was always around airplanes, right? My grandpa loves airplanes, my dad loves airplanes, right? I was just kind of fascinated by flight, that kind of thing, and they all obviously had the military history that they enjoyed, and so I just naturally picked that stuff up, which was a natural transition to when I got to high school. There was an ROTC program. I wanted to do that. I enjoyed that. I really did enjoy that. Yes, I did wear my junior ROTC. I was in my dress blues for my senior photo.
Very nice.
Yep, it's okay. I still stand by it proudly. I still wouldn't change it. But that's really kind of where it comes from. And then you have my brother who decides I'm gonna be the alter ego here, and I'm gonna go join the Army. Have fun with that. And he's going on 15 years in the Army.
Good for him.
Yep, which is awesome. I'm proud as hell of him. So that's really kind of where it comes from. And my dad tried like hell to get me to do something other than security forces. He really did. Being a junior RTC kid, you have this grandiose vision of what the real Air Force is like, and his words, I can still hear him saying it. The Air Force is not this well-oiled machine like you think it is. He says, "You will see soon enough, young grasshopper."
Yeah.
But it was, and I did. I tried to go into a different career field, but it didn't take. But no, it's been great. I mean, the thing, I've been coming out to this base since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
My dad enlisted in 1980. I was born in 1984, and I've been coming out here all my life, basically, which is kind of funny as I near the rounding third base of my career.
Yeah, facing career mortality, as somebody once referred to it. And this is the week to be at this particular wing because all of our crabapple trees are blossoming and the place smells like life. You think of a military organization and a military base, and I get it. People that have never served have come up to me and asked me questions about this podcast. Hey, this is the most beautiful campus of any military base I've ever seen. It's a fantastic place, and people bring their families out here. And
I will think of it fondly as I go to Camp Ripley tomorrow.
There you go, another beautiful place in the state of Minnesota.
Place.
This place has given you a lot of skills and a lot of career opportunities and so much expertise in dealing with human beings, and you've taken that and you became a police officer in St. Paul, but you left that job.
I did.
Why?
That's a good question. So talking about career transition, I left the police department for a myriad of reasons. Chief among them being we were starting a family. When we found out that we were pregnant with our first, Grady, I had one of those sort of how do I want my life to go kind of moments. Obviously, having a dad that was in the military, right, working all the time, going to school all the time, a police officer, right. I knew what it was like to be a son of that kind of father, right.
Yep.
And it was. I kind of had that moment like, do I want to be that kind of, do I want to have kids that have that same experience? Don't get me wrong, right? I had a great childhood, but it really came down to, now that I'm going to be a father, what kind of relationship, what kind of lifestyle do I want for me and my family?
Yeah.
And that's really kind of where the ball started to roll downhill. And I say that because the environment changed. I became a police officer in 2011. Shortly after that, Ferguson occurred with Mike Brown, and that it was a paradigm shift. And I was kind of starting to face the reality as all young cops do, right? That I'm not invincible. I am mortal, and there are a lot of risks in this job. and some very, very, very serious consequences for things going south in this job. And I was kind of faced with those potential consequences were changing. And I tell people this a lot. I'm okay with the risk of being hurt, stabbed, shot, killed. I'm okay with those, right, to serve the community. I really am. But when things started to change to now, right, that officer's name is front page in every newspaper around the world, the addresses of your kids' schools, your wife's work, right, your parents' house, right, things like that. And now they're starting to face the brunt of some consequences, right, for actions that you're taking on the job, right, whether they be right or wrong, right? I mean, that's that's the reality, right, is it's such a difficult job to begin with, right? And sometimes as a police officer, you have to do things that on the surface to someone who isn't privy to all the information can look very bad. There was a commander that worked at St. Paul, and he said, use of force never looks good to somebody who's watching as a disinterested third party. It never looks good. And so that kind of thing, you could be completely justified in your actions, right? But now, because of social media and things like that, your actions now look even worse because those videos can be edited to tell whatever story they want. And now the consequences of those actions are not just you getting hurt, you getting shot, right? Things like that. Now you're potentially talking about threats against your children, threats against your family members, and that really kind of skewed the risk reward balance for me. And I kind of had this moment where I sought the counsel of a lot of the senior officers that I worked with. And I asked them a very simple question. If you could go back to being 30 years old and having less than 10 years on this job, would you still be here? And it was a resounding no.
It is hard work.
It's hard work, right? And so I kind of had that moment where I said I had better make my decision now and live with it either way. And I kind of, obviously in counsel with my wife, she had to be 100% on board with it. And she, again, right, she told me, she said, verbatim, she said, you can go be a garbage man or you could go be the president of the United States, and I support you no matter what. Okay? So now I have the freedom, right, to know that I have the support at home to go and try and be who I want to be, right? And at that point in my life, I know that I'm only 30 years old. 30 years old seems old when you're 22, right? But not when you're 65, right?
I'm not 65 and 30-year-old still. It seems pretty young.
Yeah, it does, right?
Yep.
And so that's kind of how I think about it, right? What is the 60, 65-year-old me, what would they want me to do?
So the 65-year-old you is going to look back at where you are now, and they're going to see a workplace violence prevention case manager. Same question as first question. What is it you say you do here? What is that job?
It's a phenomenal job. It really is. Because
and it is not a military job. This is in corporate America.
This is corporate America. Yep. At a large financial institution that is headquartered right here in Minneapolis.
This does not sound like a job that shareholders and people that are beholden to profits would encourage.
Well, the job itself, on the surface, it sounds a lot like trying to manage, essentially risk of active shooters, things like that. But it's actually much deeper than that, because the workplace is changing, right? And the days of the company cares about your productivity, and that's it. Right? Is changing. And for the better. Because corporations are now starting to, not necessarily starting to, but they're really embracing the fact that these people have lives outside of this job, right? And we want to support that, right? And we want to give them what they need so that they could be successful while they're here, right? And sometimes that means that our employees are going to be involved in domestic violence situations. They could potentially have feelings of potential self-harm or suicide. They could have other situations where someone wants to do them harm, right? And so we'll talk about domestic violence because it's the majority of what we manage. So in my role, my job is to be a partner and be a supporter and an advocate for employees who are involved in domestic violence situations. We understand that this is something that generally occurs behind closed doors, at home, things like that, but it does have a direct impact with the workplace because many employees who are involved in situations like that are finding it harder to manage, right, daycare drop-off, right, day-to-day life, showing up on time, potentially productivity, right, because their mind is potentially elsewhere, right, while they're trying to manage this difficult time in their life. And so from a risk perspective also, let's talk statistics for a minute. The most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is when they are trying to leave their abuser. Mm-hmm. And for many of the people who try to leave an abuser at home, they're trying to conceal where they're going, but they have to go to work. And so it's an easy place for them to find the person that they're looking for, right? And so that's a direct risk that companies have to manage. And so that's really kind of where we come in is number one, to support the employee, right? Provide them with resources, provide them with safety tips, assess kind of where they're at, what the situation is, what the potential risk factors are, and what mitigating factors there are, but also to develop sort of a threat management plan and help them navigate those waters, those very difficult waters.
It sounds a lot like first sergeant work.
It is.
It sounds a little like police work.
It is.
What a good mix for you.
Very much so. I love it.
Can you explain what hashtag charge short rib is?
Charge short rib is actually my Twitter handle. I'd say since I met my wife, I've really gotten into cooking, and short ribs are one of my absolute favorite things to cook, especially during the winter months. And the first key, the biggest thing when cooking short ribs correctly is you've got to sear the meat on the outside so that it maintains the moisture content inside the meat. And so the key to a good short rib is getting that good char on it.
So that's the Twitter handle.
That's the Twitter handle.
Next time I tweet, I'll tweet. I don't.
Yep. I don't really tweet either.
Okay, let's play some short answer, shall we?
Okay.
Thanks for going into what you do on the civilian side too. People don't really get how much our traditional Guard airmen and soldiers do, and balancing everything, especially on the emotional side, is so key. Just communicating that. So thank you. Okay, short answer. Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers?
Aaron Rodgers.
Guilty pleasure TV show?
The First 48.
Best place to vacation with kids?
Anywhere in Florida.
Spotted Cow or Miller Lite?
Spotted Cow all day.
Favorite boy band from the 90s?
From the 90s. Can I say Metallica? They're not a boy band.
They're not a boy band.
No, they're a group of boys. They're a group of guys, though.
Oh my goodness. All right,
fine. I'll In Sync, just because I am a big. I do enjoy Justin Timberlake's music.
How can you not?
Yep.
My wife would agree with you 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Online dating advice.
Be yourself.
That worked for you.
No, it did.
Yep.
I met my wife on Match.com, and it's. Sorry, I know we're doing short answer. I was about to delve into it.
That's okay.
Be yourself.
That is always good advice.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So people don't necessarily know this about you, but you graduated from St. Cloud State University, right?
Not yet.
You're going there.
I'm going
That's
there.
right. That's where you're getting your master's degree,
Correct.
right? Master's in?
Business administration.
Business administration. So one of the people that graduated from St. Cloud State long time ago, Ralph Heimdall. Do you know him?
Nope.
You probably know his work. So you and Ralph are sitting around drinking a Spotted Cow. He is the original illustrator of Bugs Bunny.
Oh, very cool.
If you sitting there chatting with him and you said, "Hey, Ralph, I want you to draw a cartoon character of me," what would you be?
The guy that does Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
I would want to be a bear
Why?
because they're always looking for their next meal.
Boy, I tell you, I'm with you on that one.
Yep, that would be me.
Good charred short rib.
Good charred short rib.
Absolutely. So speaking of your master's degree, you have 3 busy boys. You have
Very much so.
a very busy family, a good relationship with your wife, a busy civilian career, and now you're taking on a new role out here at the guard base. What do you do to relax, and how do you manage work-life balance?
That's a great question because that is something my wife and I have been talking about extensively.
That's a struggle every airman, every soldier, every human being goes through.
It is, and everything's kind of coming to a head, right? With grad school, guard, right? LRE, going to Ripley this week.
Megan's going to listen to this and be very interested in
She
your
is.
answer.
Well, trust me, we talk about this extensively. We really do.
Yep.
Because her and I have both gone through these times in our lives where we have just packed our plate full.
Mhm.
And hers occurred a couple years ago. And she just got to a point where she says, I need to simplify things. I can't dedicate time to this and this and this and be a mother, right? And be a wife and, you know what I mean? And all of these things.
Yeah.
And I am very quickly getting to that point too. Thankfully, several of those things have, I'm towards the end of. I have 1 year left of grad school. I'll graduate next May.
Yeah.
I have 18 years of service to this country in this unit. So do the math, right? I mean, it's got one of those little squiggly lines that says roughly 2 years, depending on how things go. But right now, I have to, and I'm not that good at it, I'll be completely honest with you, is compartmentalize, right? Dedicate this time to this. With a full-time job. And when I started grad school, I just thought, okay, great. Anytime that I'm not working is grad school time. And Megan says, I can't do this without you. Dinner and baths and baseball and all this other stuff. And so she very clearly, and said, I need your help. And that's, I think, such a huge thing because I said, you're right. Absolutely. 100%. I can't just not be a husband. I can't just not be a father because I'm in grad school and things like that. So we have had that partnership, and and I'm always happy to cook dinner. We share that responsibility very evenly. So when you're doing the thing, do the thing. And I'm not the best at that because I am a procrastinator. I really am at heart. And so it's difficult for me to do that, really, really focus on it because my mind's got that list of I've still got to get this and this and this and this done. So there are things that definitely suffer, but that's how I try to do it. And when you've got the moments to hang out with the boys or hang out with the spouse or hang out with Megan, do those things.
Mm-hmm. And be in it.
Be in it.
Yeah.
Be present.
True. Hey, this podcast is right at the end of May. Memorial Day is coming up. And your family's done a lot of military service. Rounding things out, what message do you have for people that are thinking about serving, have served, or are serving as we roll into Memorial Day?
When I left the police department, Megan asked me, she goes, is it going to be hard for you to hand in your badge and gun? I thought about it, I'm like, no, not really. You're really not. And it wasn't. I slid those things across the table and said, you guys can have them. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Bye. And I never looked back.
Yeah.
And then about 6 months later, she asked me the same thing about this uniform. I said, I can't part with that. I just can't. It's something I believe in so deeply. And so for the people that are looking to serve, if you have the opportunity to, it is such a phenomenal thing we all have our reasons for serving, right? And trust me, I have gotten a ton of benefits out of being here, both intrinsically and extrinsically. But for me, it's, when you boil it down to its core, right? It's just about being a part of something bigger than yourself, and it's hard to see that at times, right? When you're in the thick of things. but that's really kind of what it's boiled down to. If you have the opportunity, do it, because you will get so much life experience. You'll learn so much about people. You'll get to know such fantastic people. My closest friends are here, period. My closest friends are here. Dustin Bowen is like my brother. I mean, literally, he is like my brother. And just all of those tremendous relationships that you build that can come into, that can just develop. I mean, when Bill Hildebrand and I met, Bill Hildebrand and I went to tech school together. We were in the same team in tech school. Hated him, and he hated me. Couldn't stand him. Now he's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
One of my best friends. And so just for nothing else, get some life experience, get to know some people, right? It will benefit you the rest of your life. And
You might sell me on re-enlisting.
Well, I mean, I would love to see you stay. A lot of people would. That's what it's about for me.
Yeah.
So
when people say thank you for your service, I struggle because the place is so darn enjoyable.
Yep.
Yeah, there's sacrifices that go with it, and our families bear the brunt of a lot of it. But I tell you what, it's a heck of a fun gig. Brian Doblar, thanks for joining me on Beneath the Wing.
I appreciate the time.
This has been so great, and thank you for taking your commitment to the airman experience to your old home and adding that to our organization here and sprinkling a little First Sergeant magic dust out in corporate America.
Yeah.
We appreciate the work that you do. Hey, before we close out here, I would like to thank my team that's helping me put these together, David Gindorf, Jared Smith for helping me do background research and develop questions, and as always, the fantastically talented Amy Lovegren for producing. Thanks for joining me on Beneath the Wing. Hope you join me next time for episode 31, where we talk to another one of our awesome 133rd members. Take care. Happy Memorial Day.